You are listening to Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. I am Owen Carver. Today we go back to the early 1980s, to a town just off the highway in rural Texas, a town that seemed ordinary, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee, where locals greeted each other by name, where life felt simple. But there was something beneath the surface, something lurking behind the counter of a 24-hour diner. Over the course of 3 years, at least 9 people vanished without a trace. Travelers, drifters, truckers, the kind of people nobody missed right away. And for years, the police had no leads, no suspects, not a single clue. Until a single mistake cracked the case wide open. This is the story of the devil in the diner. Highway 83 cuts through the heart of Texas, a stretch of road lined with gas stations, motels, and diners. In the early 1980s, one of those diners sat just outside the small town of Denton Springs. It was called Dot's Roadside Cafe, a small place with a neon sign that buzzed in the night, the kind of place that smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. It was a truck stop, mostly, a place where people came and went, where waitresses poured endless cups of coffee, where the grill sizzled from open to close. And for years, nobody noticed anything unusual. Then the disappearances began. At first, they were scattered, random. A trucker failed to check in with his dispatcher. A drifter never showed up at his next stop. A waitress from a nearby diner never came home from her shift. There were no connections, no bodies, nothing to suggest foul play. People went missing all the time, especially along the highways. Maybe they left town, maybe they found trouble elsewhere. That was the assumption. But in 1982, the pattern started to emerge. 9 people, all last seen at Dot's Roadside Cafe. It was a state trooper named James Hollis who first noticed the connection. He had responded to a missing persons report, a trucker who had vanished after stopping for fuel. Checking logs, he saw the man had eaten at Dot's just before disappearing. Hollis dug deeper, more cases, more missing people, and every time the last known sighting was the same. Dot's Roadside Cafe. The police started watching the place, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was just a diner. The waitresses were friendly, the food was greasy, the customers were always passing through. But something was wrong. And then everything changed. On April 23, 1983, a young woman named Lisa Barnes ran into the sheriff's office covered in blood. She was a waitress at Dot's and she was terrified. She told the police she had seen something she was not supposed to see. That night, after closing, she had gone to the walk-in freezer to grab supplies. She opened the door, turned on the light, and saw something beneath the stacks of frozen meat. A hand. Pale, stiff, a human hand. She had screamed, backed away, but then she heard footsteps. The kitchen door swung open, and standing there, staring at her, was the owner of Dot's Roadside Cafe, Earl Dixon. Earl had owned the place for years, a friendly man, always behind the counter, always flipping burgers on the grill. But in that moment, Lisa saw something else in his eyes. A coldness. She had run. Out the back door, into the night, all the way to the sheriff's office. When the police arrived, Earl was gone. But inside the freezer, buried beneath stacks of frozen beef, they found something horrifying. Bodies, or what was left of them. Limbs, torsos, wrapped in butcher paper, stacked like cuts of meat. Some old, frozen solid, some fresher. It took days to sort through the remains, to match them to the missing. 9 victims, all murdered, butchered, stored in the freezer. And Earl Dixon, gone. For weeks, the police searched. Roadblocks, missing posters, news reports. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished. Then, in July of 1983, a gas station clerk in Oklahoma recognized him from the news. He called the police. They found Earl sleeping in his truck at a rest stop, a knife under his pillow. He did not resist. In his confession, he said it started as an accident, a fight with a drunk trucker who had refused to pay his bill, a struggle, a death, and then a realization. The highway was full of people nobody would miss. He called it an opportunity, a way to make something of himself. Earl Dixon was convicted of 9 murders, but investigators believe there were more, people who had never been reported missing, drifters whose names were never known. He was sentenced to death and executed in 1991. Dot's Roadside Cafe was demolished the next year. But even now, truckers say they will not stop on that stretch of highway at night, because the road remembers. That is the story of the devil in the diner. A man who turned a roadside cafe into a slaughterhouse, who preyed on the forgotten, and who might have gone on killing if not for one waitress and a single mistake. Thank you for listening to Artificial Evidence. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. The algorithm knows.